Let's look at the block markup. So the syntax that we're storing in the same WordPress database where the post content goes, but now magically we get these extra capabilities of nesting blocks, having the layouting options available, all kinds of settings and attributes that we can change about those blocks. The storage is the same. So what has WordPress done that makes it so flexible now to allow for this extra customization? And all of that boils down to the very fundamentals of HTML and some magic around HTML comments and JSON attributes. If we go back to that editor, we can now insert that image here, and to view the actual storage of that data, so of this image, along with all its attributes. So I've selected the resolution to be the full size here, and I've added a caption to that image here. So we see it as just like we would see it on the output, but how is it actually stored? And for that, we can go to this toggle here on the sidebar and click on Code Editor. And now we get the textual, the syntax representation of that data that is going to be then stored eventually in the database. If we look at that image specifically that we were inserting and adjusting, we see that it has this wrapper HTML comment. This syntax with the exclamation mark at the start, that is just an HTML comment. Normally you would use it to add just random things about like why you did something within the source code, or maybe why the change was made to kind of reflect something or done in a specific way. Now in this case, we're kind of abusing that HTML comment to add semantic data. And in contrast to standard HTML elements, such as this figure that is still used within the block, right? And they have the attributes pairs. So they have, in this case, I'm specifying that class equals these two string values. Then for the actual image, we have the source pointing to the URL of the image. We have an alt attribute. You can see that the same pattern repeats. It's a key value store, but the values can be just strings. There's no way to really encapsulate any other nested structure. So what WordPress did was introduce this special type of comment. So the element is the same, but then within the syntax that comes in here, that has to follow a specific format. The first one is there is the opening element and a closing one. So just like HTML elements that have an opening, in this case figure tag, and they have a closing tag here, we have the same pattern applied to the comment, right? The HTML standard doesn't say that you can use this type of syntax here for the comments, but it is free-form text, so we can do whatever we want. Now, the smart thing that I think personally WordPress did was, instead of using those attribute pairs, it actually said, let's use just a JSON blob for all the attributes that we need for the block. So instead of the limitations of just the strings, we can now use whatever the JSON supports. So, and the JSON format supports booleans, so you can say something is true or false, or a numerical representation such as integers. Equally, it also has support for arrays, so lists of, in this case, objects, right, of key value pairs. Now you see how these elements or attributes that are assigned to the blocks can be now way more powerful compared to regular HTML elements and their attributes. So you might be wondering, what happens with this comment on the output? That's a good question. Let's pull up this preview of this post and inspect the element here. We can see, okay, it has the figure element, the same WP block image, size full, and then there is the image tag within it. But where is the comment? Now the thing is, WordPress strips them out. It knows that that is the block formatting comment, so it's really not needed for the output. The HTML is not really impacted by whatever is in the comment. It is all used by the block rendering engine and also within the editor. So to customize and store those values that we want, let's say for the size of this image, right? And how that got converted into the size full class name, that's all done by this middleware or this intermediary that then takes and adjusts this for the output. So going back to this sample here, we have the opening HTML comment, we have some HTML, standard HTML in the middle, and we have a closing tag. Then we have the attributes as JSON blob of whatever we need to associate with this block. So in this case, we had the size selected, right? So notice how it's stored as a size slug large. Now on the render side of this, WordPress will be able to determine that we need a specific size and adjust this source here to render that particular size and do any other kinds of modifications required for, let's say, the responsive sizes. Now, another interesting thing is that the attributes actually can be within the contents, within the HTML contents here. So this source attribute of the image is actually mapped to a block attribute. So whenever we'll be using this in code or referring to it, we'll get access to this image URL value without having to parse the HTML. Same with this caption here. So the caption that we specified in the editor gets inserted into this type of markup where the figure caption exists. So this is now kept in sync. That is the role of the editor. Whenever you're touching this in editing it, the block representation in the editor is responsible for keeping that in sync and giving you these additional tools, right? These toolbar as well, and all the toggles, as well as the inspector side elements here and how they impact the data that is then stored within the HTML comment and the JSON attributes. So I changed this resolution to medium, right? Let's go back to the code editor and see what that did. We can now see that the size slug has been changed to medium. Nothing else really changed. I mean, this here, the URL also got changed to the medium, right? But the caption stayed the same. Everything else is like that. So this is how then the data will be stored in the database, and on the render side, that gets extracted and formatted as necessary. Next, let's look at the attributes and where they're coming from, and also with the block type or block name. So what are the conventions for naming our blocks, and what does WordPress use compared to what is available to us?